Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of thecinematropolis.com, your home to thoughtful conversations on film and this year's podcast media partner for the deadCenter 2024 Film Festival. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and today I have the honor and the privilege to speak with one of this year's deadCenter icons, Paul Sparks. So we're going to kick things off by talking with Paul a little bit about what it means to be a deadCenter icon, what that means to him, and maybe what it means to be back here in Oklahoma. And then we'll talk about some of the other exciting projects he has on the docket. And I just wanted to note that if you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to have these exclusive interviews sent directly to your ears throughout the week following deadCenter. With that said, I'm very excited to welcome Paul Sparks. Just a couple things about him. He's an American actor. He's known for his roles as gangster Mickey Doyle in the HBO period drama series Boardwalk Empire. Writer Thomas Yates in the Netflix political drama series House of Cards. That's a terrific role, by the way. Love you in that. And he's also in several other projects, Jeff Nichols' film, the upcoming The Bikeriders. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Caleb. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little about your time here back in Oklahoma. You're coming back from New York. How's your experience been so far?
This has been really amazing. There was nothing like this when I was growing up. You know, I don't know that there was a film festival even in Oklahoma for the time that I was here. I've been in New York about 30 years. And so it's really exciting to be back in Oklahoma City, which looks completely different than the place I grew up near. Everybody here is really nice. It's very professional and fun. And it's clear that Khaki and the gang that run it love what they're doing, and they've been really generous with me and my family, so it's been great.
Well, we're thankful you all are here. Again, getting people like you who have left Oklahoma, gone on to do some incredible things, and just even stopping back in to say, "Hey, you guys are doing great work," or "Hey, it's cool to see how things have gone," is always so rewarding. What would you say has been made receiving the 2024 Icon Award meaningful for you?
Well, I think anytime you get an award, it's awesome. And to get something from the place, that you're from is really, really special. Not many people have an opportunity, I think, to probably experience that. It's funny, I think that I would have never thought that there would be any infrastructure in the entertainment business in Oklahoma when I left here 30 years ago. So it's exciting to be able to come back. And truthfully, it's nice to be around filmmakers here because there's so much stuff going on in Oklahoma that I am kind of shopping for a job here in Oklahoma. So I'm hoping that I get to come back and shoot sometime soon.
Love to hear that. I saw you at the awards presentation when you accepted the award this morning, and you talked about how there's a big difference between how things are in New York and Oklahoma in terms of the film industry. Maybe you could elaborate on that in terms of just how saturated it is.
Well, I think that there's a kind of like the heirloom, heirloom sort of culture that's in New York. It's really in all the people, it's in everything that they do. And it's something in Oklahoma that I'm finding is it's new, it's new that it's here. And so, when I was growing up here, I didn't have anybody that I was looking to and saying, "Oh, I'm going to be like that person, at my high school, or that person who, went off and became an actor." That didn't really exist. And so it's so nice to have like some support. And that's what places like deadCenter are doing. And now there seems to be enormous infrastructure for shooting films here. And my cousin, John Bielich, is a stuntman who has been in Oklahoma for a long time. I remember when he was doing the Wild West show at Frontier City. And so he was kind of like, he was my only connection to the business in a way. And I hear from him occasionally of like all the things that are going on. It's very exciting what's happening in Oklahoma. Whereas in New York, it's like, it's everyday business in many ways. I mean, look, the New York film and television world has expanded enormously since I started. When I was there in the very beginning in the 90s, it was like 3 shows and some soap operas, and now it is enormous. when I was shooting Boardwalk Empire, Steiner Studios was brand new in the Navy Yard. And there was really only like one or two shows there. And now it is a bustling, enormous, very much like LA studio system. And there is not just Steiner, there's probably, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 big studios in New York. That's new. And that's because of the incentives that came down around about that time, like sort of the 2007, 2008. And it's really changed over the last 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting to kind of hear some similarities and differences, maybe some differences in terms of the size, but it sounds like there's been a lot of growth in both Oklahoma and New York, which hopefully for you means more great opportunities, more roles opening up.
Yeah. This is a business where the majority of actors don't work. They don't make a living in the business. I feel so fortunate that I've been able to do that for as long as I have. But, the search continues. It never stops. We're always, okay, it's time to find a job again. That's part of the beauty and also the hardship of being in this business. And so whenever it opens up in a new place, that's great. But when it opens up in your home state where your mother lives, where your brother is, where your family is, where you understand the food, it's like nice to have that and to maybe try and come back.
Well, you were telling me right before we started the recording how much you appreciated the okra. So,
yes.
I mean, a big selling point for Oklahoma, of course. Now, at the festival, I know that as one of the ways to honor you and the achievement in your career, we're going to be playing, I believe, a screening of, correct me if I'm wrong, the 2021 film, it's Prairie Gothic feature, Hands That Bind.
That's right.
Co-starring Bruce Dern. Can you tell me a little bit more about what makes that film so important to you specifically and maybe why the festival chose that?
Yeah, so it's made by this guy, Kyle Armstrong, who's from a little town it's kind of in Alberta called Hannah, which is not that different than the little town I grew up in around Marlow, Oklahoma. It's small. When I stepped off the plane and drove 2 hours east to get to Hannah, I was shocked at how similar the landscape is. It is flat. It is wheat. It is farmland. It looks exactly the same as Oklahoma, the Oklahoma that I grew up in. And he has a very similar story, to me as a artistic, guy who was in a place that didn't have a lot of that kind of thing going on. He wrote a really beautiful script. He made a lot of experimental films for a long time. And then this was kind of his first narrative, like real, sort of story-driven film. And he made a really beautiful one about it's about an industry that's kind of disappearing, which is like farm life, how it's being taken over by computers and other things, and sort of agribusiness is like big, and that kind of what happens to those farmers that don't really understand how that world works. Like, what do they do? Mm-hmm. And yeah, Bruce Dern is in it, he is a force of nature, and there's a lot of really beautiful Canadian actors in it. I loved making that movie, and I was so happy that deadCenter offered to bring it and show it. Yeah.
Well, it's a great selection. I know I'm adding that one to my watch list. Big fan of you, Bruce, and everyone who's working on that. Hadn't seen it, so it's a blind spot for me. I'm excited. I want to turn things. You have a few other upcoming projects. I'm not going to belabor those, but I do have to say, as a Jeff Nichols fan, you were in Midnight Special, which is a tremendous film, one of my favorite films of that year. And there's also the upcoming Bikeriders. Can you tell me a little bit more about your collaborations with Jeff Nichols? So
Jeff Nichols is from Little Rock, Arkansas. I met him through my good friend Mike Shannon and Shea Wiggum, who were both on Boardwalk Empire with me. When he was making Mud, I went down. He's awesome. He's like such a visionary director, kind of handles it all. He writes it, he directs it. His mom is in charge of catering most of the time, in the early films. I was actually just talking to Starlin Harjo about the fact that he's working with Adam Stone, who's Jeff Nichols' cinematographer.
Wow.
And is a you know, a real jewel of a cinematographer. So yeah, he's been talking about this Bikeriders movie as long as I've known him. So I knew about it. I never really understood like what it was. But as it got closer to getting made, he said, "Yeah, we're going to actually make it now." And he got Tom Hardy, and you know, just the laundry list of people that are in that movie is pretty. It's pretty special, and it's based on Bikeriders, this kind of photojournalist book that was made. He wrote a beautiful script, as he always does, and it is a very unique look at a world that maybe people didn't really know existed. It has you'll recognize that kind of if you've seen the Wild
Bunch,
the Wild Bunch, the one with
Marlon Brando.
Yeah, the Wild. Yeah, so it's about a guy who saw that movie, was inspired by it, and sort of started his own gang. It was the beginning of gangs, sort of pre Hell's Angels, and just how that world kind of took off and had a life of its own. But I haven't seen it either. I'm excited to see it. It kind of got swallowed a little bit in the strike, you know. So yeah, I think it comes out maybe June.
Yeah, I think towards the end of this month, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I'm excited to see it.
Well, I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see you in it. I'm looking forward to just seeing all the great collaborations you two have together. One other thing I want to ask you about, you mentioned this earlier, I'm going to bring it back as we start to wind down the conversation, is both how amazing but also challenging it is to live the lifestyle of an actor. What would you say, like words of wisdom or encouragement would you offer to someone who's saying, hey, I want to be an actor, I want to work in the film industry? What parting words would you give with them?
Well, I think that the most important thing you have to have is your love for it. I mean, when I'm around people that make movies or, you know, do theater or the various things that I do, the one thing I know is I'm like, oh, these are my people. I love them. I get them. And so you have to really tap into that part of yourself that is love. One of the things that's hard about the business, I find, is that as you go further and further up the ladder, it doesn't always love you back. You know, it takes advantage of your love of the business. It uses it against you when it's negotiating, and it constantly doesn't have enough money, and it doesn't have enough time, and it doesn't have enough resources, but it wants the very best from you. And what I appreciate about the business is that the people who have stayed in it, who've been in it a long time, they always have so much to give because they believe in the stories that they tell. You can't chase, or at least it's not been my experience, that you can chase fame in this business very, very well. A lot of people try and fail, and the business sort of destroys them. But you can chase like your love of like telling stories. And so whenever I give advice, I always say, for me, it was a war of attrition. It was about staying the course, continuing to work, you know, never allowing the perfect to get in the way of doing something. I worked as much as I could, as often as I could. I created a community of people that were doing the same thing. And that's really what it becomes, is a kind of a family. I mean, you see it when I come here. I'm like, oh, right. Everybody that's a part of the deadCenter group, they're like a family. I see it. You know, I recognize it. And that's what the business is. It's small. The actors and the creatives, we are a family. And, you know, you got to find your family and just hang in there. You know, that's it.
Yeah, don't give up. And I love that you say put the focus on chasing the storytelling, not necessarily the fame.
Yeah.
You know, well, one question that we've been asking all of our guests at this year's deadCenter, just to kind of put a finer point on the incredible stories they're showing us and experiences they're creating for us, is what is your most memorable film going experience? Big question to put you on the spot, but in terms, it could be a specific movie, or if you have an experience of watching a movie with some people that were near and dear to your heart, what would say is one of your favorite, or one that comes to mind?
You know, I always think back to when I was making the very first films, the short films that I lived with a bunch of guys from, they were from Minneapolis, Minnesota back in the mid 90s, and had dreams of making movies. And we had a Steenbeck in our apartment where we used to cut film. We somehow would find the sort of like tail ends of actual film, and we shot on like 16 millimeter in our apartments. A lot of times we used everyone that we could. We never made any money at it. I can remember we had a bunch of equipment in the back of a van that we had rented, and we were afraid to park it on the street because we were in New York City. And I remember the director, this guy, his name was Alex Millier, and we decided what we would do was we would take the van and we would park it in a corner, and we would just sleep in it so that you couldn't get the doors open to steal the equipment, because we knew we were in big trouble if anything happened to that. And so for about a week, when we were making this like commercial for this gym in New York City, we slept in that van, and we would talk about the films that we were going to make, some of which we would go on to make. And I remember thinking, like, this is the life for me. Mm-hmm. This is the life I love. You know, we haven't slept. We're not being paid. We have all these people depending on us. We've called in every favor that we know. And yet we're sitting here talking about like the next movie that we're going to make. Like, that to me is like what we do. Mm. You know, it's almost like I don't even know or care if what we made in that moment was great. It was really about our relationship at that time. It was about how important these ideas of, you know, the next movie was going to be. Mm-hmm. And I love that. It's like, you know, kind of a hobo's life. It was like we were living, you know, on a train, like on just out in the wild.
At that point, passion is what you have, right? That's the thing.
It's all
right?
you have.
That's incredible. Paul Sparks, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me at this year's deadCenter, and thanks for coming out today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, listeners, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll catch you again next time.